everyone. To those listening or watching this episode, thank you for joining us here today at X-Raised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. My name is Miles, and I'm back here to kick off a brand new four-part series, The Practice Reimagined, from courtroom to code. And who better to launch this conversation than someone who quite literally spans both those worlds? Back here on the show is our all time favorite, award winning barrister who began her legal journey as a researcher for the Honorable Justice Clark, worked alongside the Honorable Michael Kirby, and is now revolutionizing legal research with AI tools she herself envisioned. With over 2 decades at the bar, a Harvard Business School credential, and published legal literature, she's not just shaping the future of legal tech, she's coding it into reality. Awarded as the 2021 Lawyers Weekly Female Barrister of the Year, one of the top 100 women in construction, and the intellectual force behind MiAI Law, here's the co founder and CEO of MiAI Law, Laina Chan. Hey, Laina.
Hi, Mara.
Hi,
It's
it's
almost embarrassing.
no
Your
way.
introduction, anyway.
It's always
Good.
a treat having you
Thanks.
here. And I was starting to think maybe we should just rename this show, or at least this episode's The Lena Briefs. What do you think?
That's not bad. Let's do that. My AI briefs.
Right? We can have
Okay.
maybe ask Lena, some stuff like that. But seriously, I can't imagine a better guest to help us launch this series from product to practice. We'll let our audience learn what do really lawyers want from AI. Let's dig into the decisions, surprises, and strategies behind my AI laws development. So I want to start and touch on once again what makes my AI law so unique. So most tech platforms are built by engineers, but my AI was founded by you, who's a well-known award-winning barrister, a lot of recognitions with frontline legal experience. How has that shaped what your platform delivers or will deliver in the future in ways engineers alone might have missed?
Okay. I'm just wondering how much to reveal. But the journey of a founder is never smooth. And so I was not the only founder. I had a co-founder, and he's the technical co-founder. But he didn't, we didn't while we were working together, we're no longer working together. We didn't get a model that worked. It didn't work. I mean, it worked, of course, it worked, but it didn't work the way I expected it to work like a lawyer. It didn't work like a lawyer. It was just his tech brain, and it didn't have the the legal brain in it. And I mean, this is part of the answer to the next question that you are going to ask me. But it just didn't involve me in the testing and iterative development of the code. So I never really knew what was going on, even though I asked. I had no idea what was going on. And anyway, after a year of doing that, that wasn't successful. So we parted ways. The new team is completely different. The new team, we work on every element together. I They show me the code. If something doesn't work, they ask me why it's not working. I look at the code and I tell them why, and I tell them how to fix it. And the key difference now is that my AI has my legal brain in it. I wrote the algorithms, I designed the whole legal architecture, I wrote the algorithms, I wrote a lot of the prompts, and I've given it to my engineers and they're implementing it. And I have to check whether it's working. They keep sending me the test results. I look at it, and when it doesn't work, I ask to look at the code. I look at the code and then I tell them what's wrong. And it just happened like this because when we started working, they set up the system architecture, and they did whatever they had to do. And we tested some questions and the answers were incorrect. And we knew that because we hadn't yet incorporated all my legal algorithms. But it just proved that without the legal input, it's just going to behave like any other a generic research model, not calibrated for law. And so I started writing all the algorithms and I started giving it to them. And the engineers said, and the chief scientist said, that he couldn't, they knew they had so many questions for me, but they didn't even know what to ask me. And that they couldn't have done, obviously, any of the algorithms and any of the prompts and everything that I've written to design the whole architecture, because how could they? They have no domain expertise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Well,
So it's not going to, your a legal AI model is
mhm.
research platform is not going to work if you don't have the actual input of the lawyer.
Mhm. Well, yeah, it's very, I mean, understandable that your journey as the founder of your company hasn't always been a smooth ride, Lena. Bumps along
No.
the way will be there. I mean, it's always possible, and it's just a matter of how you go through those bumps that really matter.
Yes.
And it's a great thing that you have this new team with you, working with you to make this as great, as perfect as you have envisioned it to be,
Well,
right?
some of them are so young. Obviously, the chief scientist is not young. I mean, he's broadcast it all on LinkedIn on the weekend that he's 42. And then he was and then he was saying that he was being outpaced by some of the 21-year-olds that who he has working for him. And then my daughter is an engineer as well, and she's helping as well,
Yeah.
to help me fix hurdles to make the machine work on my end on my computer. And and I said, oh, some of these coders that who are working for us are 21. And then she goes, well, I'm 25. And then this coder Aditya said to me, no, actually, I'm 23. And I said, well, I was wondering how you could be 21. I thought you must have been some kind of child genius that you could.
Amazing.
No, he's 23. So they're all lots of them are all really young. And the project leader on the team, not the chief scientist, he's
Uh-huh.
like, hey, they're all very young, but they're so smart. I love it.
Oh.
I love working with them. I love how we never have to repeat ourselves. There's only one thing I have to repeat, when we're looking at, when we're trying to work out what's the best source for our data,
Mm-hmm.
because we obviously want to look at the primary sources and the sources that are open source, from the governments and the courts, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the one thing we have to discuss a lot. But otherwise, when we're talking about the technical aspects of coding, etc., we all only have to say anything to each other once. It's really cool.
Wow. At least
I
I
just
think it's refreshing that you're bold enough to work with 21 years old people, I mean, engineers. Well, it's one thing to teach a machine to read a statute. It's another to teach it to think it has, say, a billable hour breathing down its neck. And that legal DNA that you really bring to my AI isn't just a bonus, it's the blueprint. Plus, you have this team, they're really great, regardless of their age, they're geniuses. No wonder your AI would sound more like a junior associate than a server stack. Because you working with them, I mean, you guys
it's
probably
sounding, no, it's not just sounding like a junior. No, it's not just sounding like a junior associate. The answers are coming across and they're sounding like senior juniors at the bar, like really good quality senior juniors at the bar, because
least.
because it has access to such a wide database. Like for example, we ran our benchmark questions across all the cases in the High Court that the High Court of Australia has handed down. And
Mhm.
so in answering the questions that we put to it, it actually searches the whole database.
Mhm.
So imagine all that knowledge that it searches the whole database, it extracts the correct cases, and then it works from first principles what the answer is. But no human being can do that
Yeah.
to
And I
for every
remember,
single question.
yeah.
It's just having perfect memory. You don't have to have perfect memory because the AI can search the entire database and then identify what's relevant and then work out what the answer to the question is. So
Mm.
it's better. There are some lawyers who have brains like this. I know some who can just remember, the names of cases and cases that were handed out. They just remember. But I don't have a brain like that. And that's why I wanted my AI, because I wanted to
I remember
had this deficiency about myself. I knew certain lawyers had this skill where they could just say, remember, we discussed this in this case, etc. And this was the principle, was be like, oh my God, that was like 3 cases back. I cannot remember what we discussed back then. And that really bugged me that I couldn't retain all the information. So this is
Mhm.
why I did my AI. And so when we when you ask our model any question, it as good as has perfect memory because it traverses the whole database to find
Mm,
your answer.
yeah. Well, I can attest to that because one time you told me I couldn't even remember saying those things in the podcast.
I know. And then yesterday I was watching an interview. Hey, we're really rambling today. But yesterday I was watching an interview with the CEO of Chanel.
Uh-huh.
She can remember the names of every single one of her 20,000 employees. And she says that if any employee has told her any story about themselves,
Uh-huh.
that she can remember it. So she can remember like your name and but so obviously she's got some special skill in her brain that she can do that. Like normal people cannot remember. So she's got obviously it's not photographic memory, is it? She's just got some other kind of steel trap going on
Mhm.
where she can whatever you tell her, she can always remember. I
Wow.
don't have
Well, that's good and genius, I guess. Well, I wish I have that memory.
yeah,
That's why we have my AI law. So
that's right.
let's talk about working with engineers, software engineers, etc., since that's how we kind of started this. And I imagine there were a few, let's say, vigorous decisions along the way. What's one feature or function you absolutely insisted on including that got some, I know there's a lot, okay, that got some initial pushback from the tech side?
Feature.
Aha, or maybe found function.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. A lot of the times they'll say, let's just leave that to stage two.
I remember the
And
10.
then they'll go, oh, because that's really hard. Let's just leave that to stage two. So, for example, I said, some of the older lawyers don't like to type, so they want a voice feature, right? So you can just talk to the
Yeah.
AI, ask it questions, and they can come back. And so I said, oh, we should have this. And they go, let's leave that to stage two. And then I said, we also need Jewel is a trademarked bot to, to my AI. So we want a support bot that so that if you're stuck, you can just talk to Jewel on the side and then Jewel will help you, navigate through the my AI. And they go, let's just leave that to stage two. And then when I say, oh, here are all the different types of questions I want to be able to answer. And one of them is a policy question, the policy basis for a lot of legislation that gets passed when and also some cases like for example illegal contracts are not enforceable because it's a policy decision you don't want to allow people to enforce illegal contracts so underlying a lot of legislation and sometimes common law principles. There are policy reasons why this is so. And so our model, you'll be able to also research the policy side of things. And we've agreed, let's just leave that to stage two because that's really involved
Yeah.
to be able to,
Right.
do that all properly. I mean, our model will do some policy analysis for you as part of the deep research
Mhm.
function. But I also want it to be able to specifically do a really deep dive into policy questions. So that's three examples. We've all agreed, let's just leave that to stage two
Uh,
after we launch.
yeah. Like the classic case of tech first, feedback later.
Well, it's really hard because our system is really comprehensive now anyway, and we can't like, as one of my advisors say, you don't have to boil the ocean. Let's just get, I want to just get the version of it, iPhone equivalent of iPhone 1 out and everyone can use it and you can tell me how it's going. And then while everyone is doing that in the background, we're continuing to develop all the features, etc. So I've already got the product requirements documents for stages 2, 3, 4 already done. I already have stage 5 in my brain. I have to put that down on in writing. So, so that everyone is already getting the benefit of my AI while we continue to develop the features and increase the jurisdictions that we service.
Right, right. You know what? I'm just really glad that your new team uh keeps it open book with you because they cannot forget one crucial rule of litigation and startups in this case. Never go to court or code without you, the barrister. I mean, not
Yeah.
just a typical barrister in this
Well,
case.
I mean, you can leave me out of it, but then it just doesn't work.
Exactly.
It's not legal tech, it's just tech.
It's just tech. Exactly. And you've
Right.
also said that what lawyers want isn't just speed. You folks want trust. So how does that core value show up in the actual product experience of My AI Law, Laina?
We reason from first principles, which means that we're not looking at what authors say cases or legislation mean. Eventually we will, but we don't have access to those anyway because we're working from publicly available cases and legislation. And so when we answer a question, we are looking at the cases and we're looking at the core principle in each case. And then that is footnoted. And by the time we launch, it'll be hyperlinked and hot linked to the specific paragraph reference. So in our research report, the answers will come out and we have told our machine, our model, that it is not to hallucinate. But you can't always prevent that because that's how AI works. But we've told it not to hallucinate and that everything it references, any principle that it references, has to be tied back to a specific case, and then it will be hyperlinked. When you click on the answer, it will take you directly to that spot in the case or the piece of legislation.
Mhm.
So it'll make it very easy for the lawyers to check
Yeah.
that it's not hallucinating.
Right. And I love that insight at the speed of trust. That's actually really refreshing in a world of, highlight reels and fast takes. You're choosing clarity over flash. And honestly, if I were a lawyer buried in briefs, I'd rather wait a few minutes for accuracy than get a 5-second shortcut to a malpractice suit, right? And my AI seems like this, as you said, expert senior
Now
cooling.
we've got two versions. So we've got light answers and we've got deep answers. The
Ah,
light answers may take a minute to return. And
okay.
the deep research answers so far has taken up to 4 minutes. But so far, we've already been testing on the High Court database. We needed to make sure that our system was working on the High Court database before we started building out the rest of our system. And so it has worked, and we've run the 30 questions that Alan's Linklaters came up with last year to test the language models to see whether, the language models were fit for purpose. Obviously, they were not back then, but we're not just a language model. We're a complex legal tech architecture and system architecture that uses multiple levels of language models, and we have got multiple agents doing lots of work all at the same time. And so, what's my point?
Yeah, you have like different levels. You have simple and complex ones.
That's right. And so right. So we've run our 30 questions that Alan's came up with last year through our model, and it's passed all 30 questions.
Uh-huh.
And we've done the light research version, we've done the deep research version. It's passed all of the questions.
Uh-huh.
And we've compared it against the human research that my in-house counsel and I did. It took us over 3 weeks to come up with the answers to all 30 questions, and my AI deep research reports for all 30 took less than 2 hours, and they're all accurate. So it's pretty scary.
No, it's actually amazing that it not
Yeah,
only reads everything, but actually remembers everything, as you said.
it doesn't remember. I don't know if it remembers past that question,
But
but
you
it's just that
engage it
during the
with.
research process, it has to go through every step. And then,
Mhm.
when it generates the answer, it's accurate. I mean, it has to.
It's every lawyer's dream, Lena, I'm sure.
I know, but then it was so accurate, I was worried that it may scare people. But, it's really just meant to save your life. Like yesterday, I was doing a mediation and there were some points of law I needed to check. And I had prepared the pleadings, I had prepared the defense, I had prepared the cross claim in the case, and, a while ago, over a year ago. But then in the mediation, I wanted to check some points and I ran the questions through my model, and it brought up all the relevant cases. It did the research report and confirmed that, the strategy we had adopted was based on the law.
Mhm.
So, but it was able to do that quickly. And, it was just nice. It just, in that case, I was using it to affirm that my strategy was correct because I had done well, I already knew the law before, but because, I'm a construction lawyer, these are construction breach of contract type cases. So I knew the law, But so yesterday I used it to affirm that my strategy was actually correct.
Yeah, you challenge it yourself. And
I challenged myself. That's right. And then it gave me all the cases that said, yes, that, the strategy that we had adopted was correct.
yeah.
Well,
So,
based on the law anyway, that, I wasn't like,
So when building legal research tools, Lena, how do you actually draw the line between what can be automated and what still needs human eyes, especially when the stakes involve strategy, nuance, or layered precedent?
no, the whole research process is automated. It's that when you get the research report, then the human has to cast their eye over it. And then they have to work out which areas or which parts of the report or which parts of the answers they want to delve deeper into. So, like yesterday, when the report came back, it told me everything that I already knew, but it highlighted one particular case that I now want to look at a bit more closely.
Mhm.
That's what you should be doing, right? You don't,
Yeah.
you have to, you should, I didn't have to check because I already knew all those cases. So I
Mhm.
already knew that what the AI was saying was correct, but it highlighted a case that I wasn't aware of. Well,
Mhm.
maybe I read it in the past, but I couldn't remember if I had. I probably have read it in the past. And now I want to look at it more closely today after we finish this to see what it's saying in detail.
Mhm. Well, since this,
And so it only gave me the answers. The strategy of what I do with all that information was still mine.
Mhm. Yeah. Since this sounds pretty amazing, I want to just make it clear. I just want to clarify and make it clear. And I don't want to scare anyone, or we don't want to scare anyone that, AI is so great that they might lose their job. So we have other episodes, previous episodes that they can check out to learn more how actually my AI law can benefit them and assist them to be better, efficient and be faster. So basically, my AI is doing the heavy lifting, but the lawyer's still steering the ship. And that makes sense why you're building this platform, right? And it's
Well, I built it for myself to help myself. I didn't build it so I
initially,
could make myself redundant. I built it so that I could be the best version of myself.
yeah.
Like with superhuman capabilities. And last night I was listening to an interview that Jensen Huang of NVIDIA was giving, and he said, AI is not going to take your job, but your job is going to be taken by lawyers who use AI. He didn't use
Mm,
lawyers, obviously, but coders or whoever it is he was talking about. But I think that's true. AI itself is not going to take your job, but if you are competing against a lawyer, for example, who uses AI really effectively, then they're going to show themselves to be way more efficient and way more productive than you, and that they're the person who's going to take your job, but not AI by itself, because AI by itself is not fit for purpose. It's not a lawyer. It's
right.
just, as you say, doing the heavy lifting and giving you the raw data, the raw
Mhm.
information about what the correct law is in relation to a set of facts. It's not itself there to then say, oh, this is what you should do with that information
Yeah. And
to
for
help your client get the outcome that they want.
Mhm. And for them to not be left behind, it's actually a relief to hear a tech CEO like you say human in the loop without sounding like they want to replace the entire loop. Again, there's still no substitute for instinct sharpened by experience, especially for lawyers or maybe doctors as well. And finally, one last question. What's one big misconception, Lena, you're still having to battle in 2025 when it comes to AI tools for law firms?
It's this thing that everyone thinks that AI will replace them. It's starting to irritate me, actually. Everyone thinks AI is going to replace them because everyone doesn't understand how AI works. AI is just working on probabilities and inference, and it just tells you it can, and the language models by themselves can't replace you because they're not even tuned for any specific profession. And so if you just go out there and use OpenAI, and for law, etc., it will return a lot of answers that sound really credible. But if you look into it deeply, you'll see that it has relied on cases that are not relevant to the issue, or some of those cases don't even exist.
Mhm.
And so language models are just one not language, yes, language models like OpenAI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, they're not tuned for any particular profession.
Ah,
So it takes
general.
someone from the profession, whichever profession you're talking about, to come and build a model that uses elements, various language models, whichever ones they want to use, and then build a whole system architecture and build something that's going to work holistically
Yeah.
as a lawyer. And
Mm.
this is a lawyer, this is a basically what we're getting back when you use my AI is really a PhD level researcher
Hmm.
with infinite capacity to remember and hold information in its head and work out what the answer is and look at all the side issues that might arise, etc.
Hmm. It's not the enemy, but not, it's a learning partner. And lawyers
Yes.
who embrace my AI aren't being replaced. They're just getting a much sharper toolkit. And it's not science fiction. Let's clarify that. It's a
Well,
survival
when I was
strategy.
when I was a lawyer in a law firm, and even when you're a barrister, some clients don't want to pay for research. They seem to think that the lawyer should know all this information in their head. Obviously, which is not the can't be the case because there's so much law out there. How can we know? And so this can only help lawyers because it will reduce the amount of time spent researching, which some clients don't want to pay for anyway. And then you get a much better quality output, and the lawyer can then do what the lawyer is paid to do, which is strategize and implement the strategy and get the outcome that the clients want.
Yeah. Well, I think we just underscored how my AI law isn't just about tools, it's about trust, timing, and knowing where tech ends and human judgment begins. So, Lena, thank you again so much for being
Thank you.
generous, insightful, and cheekily precise guest.
Thank you, Miles.
Well, I think you always leave us a few IQ points smarter, Lena. Thank you so much. We heard how Lena's legal acumen built the bones of a platform that's reshaping practice from inside out. So go check out myai.law, and I highly recommend checking out their Gen AI Practice Solutions page if you're serious about evolving your legal practice with intelligence and integrity. Thank you guys for tuning in to X-Rays, and we'll catch you again in the second episode of this series with Lena. So this has been your host, Miles. Stay focused and inspired with X-Rays.